It's by his door.
That's how long the table was. All right.
Okay, so I have a fairly simple way of going about it. Things to do with time.
Let's start with putting it in practice in place. And then Can you actually do the practice?
After we open these, or wait for people to open and let them know?
I'll place out.
I need a folding chair. I'm going to ask you if you have a tripod. I just got the answer. I like tripod. I like the tripod that he has. It's a monopod. Is this construction tape?
It's gaffer's tape.
It's gaff tape.
What does that mean?
Gaffer's tape is what's used by people in the movie industry to hold things.
Oh, yeah, okay, I know what that, yeah, I know the thing, okay. I don't know what it's called, but I know what it is.
Gaffer's tape.
I just gotta know the angle, I gotta know what's in.
Yeah, right. You gotta know exactly
Looks
where it's
beautiful. You should take some pictures. You know, like before going out here, but it still looks good.
Like I always do, I have pictures of the blenders.
Yeah.
Ladders.
Should we take pictures before I'll put you show? If you turn it on, we can test and see how your voice, how you sound.
I'm there.
I'm assuming that, no problem with the mic. Well, I was looking to see the guy's face, he just said like,
That's a good point. I was looking for a shorter stand for that open.
it's not gonna make it very low. Is low better or is high better?
Close to your face first. But I want to hear what you sound, how close you have to make you up.
I don't know what does this sound like? Does this pick up? The real question of the mic is not so much of the room, but it's the question of the people watching on the video.
Well, that's not an obstacle at all where it is. Where it is right now isn't a barrier at all. It's almost, actually what you're wearing is sort of
Is this good?
well, we can't, except we can't hear you.
No, but I'm trying to like be in different positions. It's not a big guy like
This room is actually pretty good, this is to start with.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the right side of it.
I just took the treble out.
I'm more concerned about that getting, I'm more concerned about the YouTube getting the sound than the people in the room. I think the people in the room will get it.
Well, in order for the mic to pick you up well, you're gonna have it closer to your face.
Okay, so the guy who's sitting here is not picked up by the mic.
No, definitely not. The mic's gotta be past the sound. Yeah.
That's important.
That's why there's all this new cord on the table.
Yeah, we have to tell that to the people out there. What about like this? Are you able to watch it now to see what's getting picked up?
He's setting it up. But right now I can see you and you're fine.
You can see, but can you hear?
I can't tell. He'll be able to tell soon. He's logging in right now.
No, it is streaming, and I'm about to find out whether we can hear it directly from YouTube.
Exactly there.
No, I had it because I had it streaming because I want to get the link.
This is like Yakov.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can. It's a dance floor over here. You can have a whole
You
circle.
never know when you need it. Go and do a sound check now.
I'm just wondering, standing like this, does the mic pick anything up? You hear what I'm saying on the mic?
Do you hear it or not?
I just put three over here.
It's perfectly clean. Here's fine.
What about if I'm sitting in the wrong chair?
My phone has a very advanced area mic that captures the whole room.
Okay, so
Anyone says something, I say something over here, the mic picks it up.
So it's picking everything up really good.
Everything, very nicely. I'm not concerned, but right now I'm concerned with getting the proper link out to people.
Got three more things.
I gotta look my phone downstairs. I gotta go back downstairs to my phone. But we have to make an announcement actually to remind people to turn their phones off.
Turn the phones off. Who turns their phone?
No, the, what? Yeah, I'm gonna go downstairs for a second. Okay.
This one is perfect for this table.
What?
This one is on this table, so I think this is perfect.
Yes, that's what I said, yeah. So open this box of stools over there, and get a stool, put each one of the things.
Oh, it's dry already, Yakov.
Okay, good.
Spread that link, Sarah. Spread that link. The link that I just sent out. Resume.
And it's now facing this way.
Facing the right way.
Yes, convenience.
It's good to have, you know, if you put two people, two reasonable.
It works, it works.
Time. You got it?
I'm on.
Oh, that, now, if you go to, it's 45 seconds in, the old one.
Oh, and then
That's
what
it.
happens? So no one thinks they're watching it.
Yeah. Or not. I put the updated link.
Not working right now. I am working,
You're so very right now.
but you're early.
Well, I'm gonna put it in the comments as well. But it should come up at 45 seconds. Comes up on the computer. I'm gonna put it in the comments. I'd like you to post it in the comments. Here's the actual link. I don't have you in here.
Somebody has asked me, how old will your grandfather been now? He was alive.
I think we start saying that people 90, and Tzaddik Vav, I think, it would be 95, I think. Oh, but if you don't touch it, the automatic play goes into live now.
It goes into live now. If you don't touch it, it goes into.
Are you fixing? Yeah, it's live now.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Hello.
Excellent. Very good. If you don't touch it, then it plays. Okay.
Yeah, except the delay is quite big.
Yeah, there's a slight delay,
It's
but
funny.
there's nothing I can do about that.
That's good. I mean, it doesn't matter. They don't know there's a
That way, if
delay.
somebody says something, you can always interrupt it really fast.
Okay, you got it. I'm not gonna help.
But this is good. But you can see, I'm using a wide-angle camera, so it should actually catch that area.
It goes as far as the third seat from you.
I think it goes from here.
Yeah, 2 seats past the vodka, right, that seat's the last one.
Okay, from here all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent.
That should be decent.
Turn my
And
phone off.
I'm going to be sitting in the back, monitoring it from my computer,
That's
so
what
that I
I
can
was
trouble.
worried about.
So that if somebody says anything, he's the guy who can, cut it off.
Oh, well, and by the way, so okay, after the Farbrengen that weird here.
There's a few different times, so mix them together.
It was working so well.
It's gonna be a live feed here? Not this one, you're on it already. I had all your friends on YouTube.
Can you tell what Shas this is?
No, mix them.
No, I can't. But it looks beautiful.
And, hold on.
What's on the table?
Put a little more on that. Another-
I want to take a look at it. Here's the thing, it's working. Oh, no, that's the back. That's from the back. This is from the Rosh. This is an old possum chest. Is it leather battery set? Oh, wow. Yeah, that picture is not from the inside of from the Gemara, that's from the Rosh.
So the cover has a lot of information on it. Lots of detail.
Oh, wait, what?
What are we familiar with the short?
It's a bragsa. שכל האוטם כולו כדאי כי בוי מקרר או יצמח
No, you're actually over there, you're not here. You're there.
Yeah, basically, for some weird reason, it keeps cutting out of like after like 5 or 10 minutes, which is exactly the reason why I'm sitting here to make sure. It's not. I have no idea what it's going to be. No, it has nothing to do with movement. So I don't know why it's cutting out, but I can.
I want to start exactly at 9 o'clock, but 9 o'clock is exactly also we want people here.
Which is perfectly fine. And you know what? That's
The question is, we'll slide a meeting, we can play another meeting over here.
No, I'm not gonna do any of that stuff. But it looks beautiful. It's the what's cordon on the front. You're right. That's a lot of information, but it's actually not information about the shots. It's a quote from the Raisa. I can't tell you what kind of shot it is, unfortunately. Hey, can somebody get me a folding chair? Oh, there's one.
I need a folding chair, a regular chair.
Because there's the full regular chairs aren't going to fit back there. In the tiny little space that I have, I need a folding chair to put back there.
So what are you gonna do? Back here.
I'm gonna put this.
All right. See the folding chair?
Thank you very much. I need a folding chair. Like, to the point that I'm gonna have to go like, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. See how it's, take wood out, fit back there? Okay, so here's the situation with this. The battery needs to be, so I'm gonna do this here. I'm gonna anchor this a little bit better, I think, because it doesn't look like it's so great here.
Yeah, and you've got to worry about somebody absent-mindedly bumping into it.
Yeah.
I would put the battery down here so that there's no stress.
You have it? Where? Oh, it's over here. Yeah. There's no way that my phone is gonna. Okay.
Now, hold on, one of them is higher amperage than the other.
It can be in the lower amperage, I think.
This, probably won't hold up. This is 0.1, this is
0.1.
1, this is 2.1.
Oh, 2.1 should be fine, but 1 should really be fine, Bam, as to keep it where it is, not to charge it. I don't need it to charge it. I need
This
to
should
keep
hold it just fine.
Okay. So I'm gonna be basically taking care of the technical stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna be taking care of the technical stuff, and I'm gonna be having 1 ear in the actual Farbrengen and 1 ear on the fake Farbrengen. I mean, for the live stream. Which unfortunately is going to mean that it's gonna be really confusing for me, because I'm gonna hear a 5.
There you go. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Because I'm gonna hear a 10-second delay. I mean, in 1 ear I'm gonna hear it, in the other ear I'm gonna hear a 10-second delay. That is one of the silliest, one of the funniest things I've heard in a long time.
It's actually, maybe that's how the guys who were able to memorize say. They were in a room with an echo, so they heard it twice.
You gonna open up these stuff?
They weren't opened up intentionally.
Yours have to be finished.
Open up everything on this.
It was intentional that they weren't opened yet, because sometimes people will dive in and consume all the really sweet stuff before anyone else gets it.
They made it look like it's wrong.
They actually had someone come in and eat like 4 pastries in the week.
Okay, so now look what happens when you go to the old link. Okay, I'm working on something here. Ooh. All changes saved, so why make some bits?
Whenever once you use those, you're gonna need more water.
Yeah, that's usually brought some tin foil on the cover this.
Just get a piece.
It should
Yeah, there's more
go
to,
to.
folks said there's more here.
Okay, so it's have to come up.
And the rest of the food is to come up.
Oh, so now when you open it, listen, the main link is here, and here. Click here to go to the Farbrengen, that gives the real link.
Think about it, I'll move it. Think about it.
The live one. Just like that. Yakov,
Yes.
I did a way that I don't even have to go and restart it, because if a person goes to the original link, there's like 5 signs that say click on this to go to the Farbrengen.
Okay, well, some people do talk.
This is, can you like pass me one of those?
You want salsa? I'll get you.
Okay, so I'm gonna do it a bit differently.
You got a great view of your hand.
Yeah, that's what's going on here. That's what's going on here. I need a thing to control.
Facebook Live?
Huh?
No, straight to YouTube.
Take out Outfitters?
Hmm.
Oh, this is just a charger. This is just a charger.
Why is it at such a funny angle?
Is that flesh? Is that real liver?
Huh?
It's at a very funny angle.
Right now?
Yeah. Hold on, I'll adjust. Can you tell me how it looks?
Is it better? Very good.
I wish I could manage the live stream.
You focus on that, I'm gonna get this so it doesn't move.
Yeah, the problem is that I might need to, if it disconnects again. Okay.
You need the box.
Disconnected again? No, it's connected right now.
So why you keep taping?
I'm taping it so it doesn't move. Because otherwise you might end up standing on the screen like this. And we want to see you as an upright Jew.
Good. A place like a casino, they don't put a clock on the walls. You get lost. You shouldn't have started with you. You got lost in that theater.
There's no, yeah, exactly. There's no clock. There's not down by time.
Well, that was these headphones.
No,
It's also not down by the little way.
These headphones are now headphones. It's on the wrong camera. And I can't, and the problem is if you tape it like this, I can't change the camera.
Well, sure you can, but then it has to be retaped.
Okay. If it gets interrupted again, I'm going to switch the network that the phone is connected to. Okay.
if it gets interrupted again, I'm gonna switch the network.
It would be unfortunate. We wanted to not be interrupted anymore.
Yeah, I'm not a happy camper about that, because I hoped that this would be uninterrupted streaming, but, oh.
What are you starting? I don't know. You walk in the door, and right before you even get in, you don't even put down a lot of words.
Why are you knocking at China? Why are you knocking at China? China. Not to China. Never heard the expression. Heard the expression.
You ever been to China?
Nope. Not to China. Like, another translation means taking ground in the TV. It means don't bother. Why bother? Oh, something like, well, we just stop at night and come back and say, wait. No, you want to say L'chaim before? No, that's, I stopped in the
This is my jacket. I jacketated my chair so that my chair wouldn't be vacuumed.
You canify?
I jacketated. Uh-oh. Oh, now it begins.
This I'll finish. I'd rather give less than they finish. The whole part.
I shall. He is the official agent. Just understand that by virtue of being in that spot, you're a guardian of the phone. You have to make sure that nobody messes with it. Contemplate messing with it, you have to immediately intervene. Yes, and it's streaming live. High speed.
Facebook Live or?
No, YouTube live.
We're not.
Right here, here.
Pervert. Something pervert.
Excuse me.
Hey, how's it going? Who's the naked guy? Nothing.
I saw him here a minute ago. Hey, Gabriel. You have a naked?
How's it going, brother?
You've always been good for us.
I follow along with
Robert J. will be happy if you love this thing. See this later for?
I am having a weird time with this, but I hope that it's live, and it's not, and is it?
What? Oh, the box? No, it was out of my back. 85, 1985, whatever, I'll be back. 2005, ow, my back.
Oh, this is my insurance.
Yeah.
So you found it?
Everybody's welcome to watch if they want to.
And if you don't want it?
So I'm sitting back here.
Did you figure out the problem?
No, I don't have the problem figured out. That's basically the situation.
Okay, look, if it's, I'm just gonna.
We'll get started. Let's see here. First and foremost, here, big thank you to Yakov Silverstein.
He doesn't even know we're talking about.
He doesn't know we're talking about it. It's better that way. I don't want to get embarrassed that we're thanking him. He really did a lot of hard work this week in making sure that everything's so wonderful, so beautiful menu, and everything else. Yashikar to Yakov for the new base medish.
This is the first Baruch Hashem we're learning in there already about a month, I would say. Full time tonight for his birthday. We are having a in this honor. Now, that Rebbe over there talks about how by a tzaddik, the concept of their years continue what they have done during their lifetime, continue after their lifetime, and years continue. The Rebbe over there is talking about the Friedrich Rebbe spoke about the Rebbe Shabbat's capital many years after, 25 years after his estalbus, still spoke about that year's capital, and it was progressed 25 years later. And in fact, interestingly enough, Tavshin Aleph on Chav Dalet Cheshvan, an interesting thing happened. A few months after Rabbi Hecht's passing, which was passing, you know, is the yard is 2 B'Av, Tesvav, Chamisha Asa B'Av, and that year on Chav Cheshvan, Tavshin Aleph, a few months later, the Rebbe gave out the Kinus. And a few nights later, on what was like tonight, Chav Gimel going into Chav Dalet, the Rebbe gave out another Kinus again from a mimer at that time, it was a printed mimer from the Rebbe Rashab. And on the cover it says Chav for Chav Cheshvan for the Rebbe Rashab's birthday. It was the mimer, but nonetheless it was actually given on Rabbi Hecht's birthday on Chav Dalet Cheshvan. And in that mimer, in the beginning over there, the Rebbe Rashab is talking about how we are all full. Everything that we do has a limit. And even the mitzvahs that we do, everything is limited. And the Rebbe Rashab goes into detail talking about some things are limited by time, some things are limited by place, some things are limited, different types of limits that every mitzvah has. But even a mitzvah like Avas Hashem, which is there's no limit on how much Allah Hashem, being that we are limited beings, we are limited in how much we can do. But Hashem is really full. Hashem there's no limits. And I'd like to share a story that kind of talks about this idea where we can tap into the limitless blessings that Hashem gives us. But just before the story, I also want to share the Hayom for Chav Dalet Cheshvan, which I think is something that Rabbi Hecht really embodied very much in his life. The story and the Hayom are both aspects of Rabbi Hecht in his life that you really identify and connect with. Hayom for Chav Dalet Cheshvan says that in material matters and gashmias, one should always look at someone whose situation is lower than themselves and thank Hashem for all the kindness He's given, what you gave him so much, Hashem. But when it comes to spiritual matters and ruchnius, you should look at someone who is higher than himself and ask Hashem, please give me more, and I should have the intelligence to learn from the other person, and I should rise on a higher level. And Rabbi Hecht was like this. He always saw other people that were in need, Gashmias, try to help them, and he himself was always trying to work on himself and his own ruchnius to rise to a higher level. The story is told that in the times of the Alter Rebbe, many Chassidim, for a livelihood, what did they do? They had little mini distilleries. They would make some type of a whiskey or beer or some type of a mashka, and they would sell it, and that was their form of livelihood. One day the Russian government decided that the only ones who can produce alcohol beverages is the government, and that meant that all these Chassidim were in this line of business would overnight lose their parnasa, they would have to lose their livelihood. And so they were very concerned about this. And so a close group of Chassidim gathered together to go into the Alter Rebbe, and amongst this group of Chassidim was the Mittel Rebbe, the Ar Shashela, Birchas Rezis. And the Alter Rebbe then told them, this also explains the bracha that we give, the Kohanim make when they bench us. So the Kohanim Duchen, they make the bracha, Sheket Yishon B'Mitzvah Sivano, about the bracha, about the mitzvah, the Heilige mitzvah, and he said, Levorech es Amcha Yisrael, to bless the Yiddish people, the Ava with Ava. And the Alter Rebbe said this means that the bracha of the Kohen Yisrael has to be done with love, a Kohen has to do it with love. But says the Alter Rebbe, it also means they are blessing the Yiddim that they should have Ava. Because when the Yid has Ava, when we love each other, that becomes the Keli, that is the way that we are able to receive all Hashem's tremendous blessings. After the Rebbe told that to the group of Chassidim that came in to see him, he then went out to the big base medrash, and although the Rebbe had a good voice that carried well, went on to the bima that everyone should see and hear. And the Rebbe announced and said that the Chalkel Chaim B'Chesed, the second bracha Shmoneh Esrei, we say that Hashem gives life with Chesed. And the Rebbe went on to say that Hashem gives life with Chesed, not with mashka factories. And Hashem's chesed is not like a person's chesed. When we receive something, we don't know the real reason why we receive that chesed. But when we receive the chesed and this loving kindness from Hashem, that is the very hashpah, that is the influence that Hashem is shining upon us, the chesed from Hashem, that He gives a person life. But to receive this chesed, you need a keli. You need a way to be able to receive it. And that is through the ava and achva, that's through love, and through friendship. Through love and friendship, we make ourselves ready to be able to receive Hashem's blessings. And the Rebbe then finished and went down from the bima. And this story goes on. The Physics Rebbe is one who tells over the whole story. And he says that year the Chassidim had we were making a lot of money. So on one level, the story tells us how to go out and make money. But it really tells us of all blessings in life, how to receive the limitless blessings from Hashem is that when we make sure to tap into with ava and achva, with love and friendship, this is something that Rabbi Hecht really strived his whole life for, then becomes, we make for ourselves, in the story, all the Chassidim did it, it affected the entire community to be able to receive all these tremendous blessings. It is, we should have tremendous blessings.
Amen.
We should have tremendous ava and achva, and we should really be able to receive all the tremendous blessings, of course, starting with Mashiach, and then all the other blessings that we need. That's just a warm-up. The real people Farbrengen tonight are my uncle Rabbi Shalom Ber. For those of you that don't know, he is the chairman of the Executive Committee for the Mother Organization of Hadar Hatorah of the National Committee of Students in Jewish Education. He's also the senior Sephardic rabbi in Queens. And by the way, when my uncle Rabbi Shalom Ber got married, there was a question of him taking a rabbanis of being a rav and a shliach in a shul in Australia. If I make mistakes on the story, you can correct me. But the Rebbe at that time said that he should stay in New York, and he will be a rav of even more the Jews that there are in all of Australia. Obviously, the Rebbe's words come true. The words of a tzaddik come true. So, and also another one of the guest speakers tonight, not my guest, is my father, the chairman of the trustees, the board of trustees of the NCFPE, also very involved in the yeshiva for many, many years. And also Rabbi Shimon, who I'm sure will be here soon.
yeah. The story is told. The story is told when the previous Rebbe came to America. He met with America in 19. When he came to America in 1940, that was the first time he came to visit. He came to settle there. And getting out of Europe just as the war began. Some of the and ultimately coming here in the spring, late winter of 1940. Various groups with a lot of Chinese in the Rebbe. Either in the first or one of the first meetings, the story is told that the rabbis thought that it was important to them to make a point to the Rebbe that, in those days, the frum people in America felt that it's important that we should sort of blend in with society. Even in the 1930s, it was very rare that frum Jews, when they went out into the street, that it was visible. Everybody wore a fedora hat, so frum Jews put on fedora hats also, and they wore the regular suits that everybody wore. And almost none had beards. My uncle, my father's eldest brother, Shlomo Zalman, who was bearded in the 1930s, everybody made fun of him. Even the frum guy, it's frum French, and she would turn with that made fun of him. So the idea was in the street, you had to have it from home, you had to have it from the highest level that you could based on the knowledge that you had and the education that you had. But in the street you had to be able to blend in. We didn't want to bring the eye of the people upon us, and God forbid, to give opportunities to others, and those who didn't like Jews, and those who weren't sure about Jews, and so on, to try to single us out for either good or bad or whatever it was. In addition to that, that was just the general attitude of the people at that time. So when the Rebbe came to America, everybody knew here that the Rebbe's lifestyle in Russia had been to defy the government, to bring people to the point of Mesiras Nefesh, that they should go out and make yeshivas and make Hadar, make mikvahs and make shuls and so on, under communist rule, which was, of course, ultimately brought the death penalty to many of them, and others were sent away to Siberia because of that. So they knew that the Rebbe was a very progressive, very, very progressive. So they thought that it would be wise to bring to the Rebbe's attention that he should understand that in America we have to take a different approach, not the way he did in Russia. In America, if we whatever it was that specifically they were talking about, has not come down in the story. The story has come down that they came to the Rebbe to tell him that America is different, and the hope was that the Rebbe would understand the differences in America to the European and to Russia, and therefore his derech would follow especially Americanized way. The Rebbe responded to them, or it's very possible the Rebbe started off the conversation, knowing what they were about to tell him. That's also possible. The Rebbe said that America is mishtamish. The Rebbe's approach, the first point was America is not different, and therefore they had to understand that the Rebbe's approach was to bring Yiddishkeit and to do whatever he could to see to it that those survivors who would ultimately come to the United States from the Holocaust would have a framework of Yiddishkeit in America, and that even more than that, that those Jews who have become assimilated in America and have lost the connection to Yiddishkeit, that they would be able to find in Lubavitch and in the Rebbe's schools and in the Rebbe's outreach, they would be able to find a trail that would bring them back to God and bring them back to Yiddishkeit. That led into the idea that the Rebbe felt it was very important to bring the American young yeshiva boys, American young yeshiva boys into under his sphere of influence. Rabbi Jacobson, who was the actual original founder of Hadar Hatorah, he had come to America in the 1920s. I don't know exactly where it was. He was a shliach of the previous Rebbe, and he set up a shtiebel in Brownsville. That's where it was, in Brooklyn, Brownsville, which is only 15 minutes from here. You walk straight down Eastern Park when you get to Brownsville. I was born in the hospital on the corner of Ralph Avenue, Eastern Park. It used to be called Brooklyn Jewish Women's Hospital. Then it was called Brooklyn Women's Hospital. Now there's still some sort of an infirmary over there in that building. Well, I was born in that building. That was, Brownsville was the Yerushalayim of Brooklyn. And Brooklyn was the Yerushalayim of, well, Manhattan had a lot of Jewish people also. Brooklyn was the center of Yiddishkeit. Here, Brownsville was the center of Yiddishkeit in Brooklyn. So Rabbi Jacobson set up a shul in Brooklyn, and he began to bring young people. He was a very dynamic and a very charismatic person, Rabbi Jacobson. And anybody who got to know him got to love him. Rabbi Jacobson used to do the gittin. Babich, he was a Rebbe who wrote gittin, who did divorce, Jewish divorces. My father, when he was young, he used to one of the areas of Rabbanus that Rabbi Hecht learned and practiced was going into gittin. And he used to go to Rabbi Jacobson, and at Shiva Rabbi Jacobson, he had training in writing divorces from Rabbi Jacobson. So we had, in our family, we were kids. Sometimes I thought, I'm going to Rabbi Jacobson, he has to write again. He came back 2 hours later and said, Lou, what happened? What do you mean what happened? The couple came to speak to Rabbi Jacobson, by the time you finished, they decided not to get divorced. This is not what, it wasn't one time. I would say that this happened dozens of times. Rabbi Jacobson had magic when he spoke to people, and he had such love and such sweetness. I had 1 year at my mashpiyah in 77. And when he talked to you, he held on to you, and he spoke to you with such an ahava and with such a sweetness and with such love that it was just, you melted. If there was anything in you that you ever wanted to be, independent, rebellious, smart aleck, not to Rabbi Jacobson, you couldn't do it. Because there was so much love there, and there was so much caring in it, that you just melted. So Rabbi Jacobson started to attract young men, and probably women too, from his neighborhood of Brownsville. A lot of them, there were two yeshivas, two big yeshivas at that time, which was on this side of Brooklyn, eastern Brooklyn. One was Chaim Berlin, and one was Torah Das. Torah Das was in Baruch, we was very, Chaim Berlin wasn't that far, with the bus, with this, with that, to get to Williamsburg. That was considered it. Not talking about the other end of Brooklyn, which was Bensonhurst, or further than that, with the worst one yeshiva was. So Jacobson attracted many of these young men. And they used to come to his shul on Shabbos, used to come to his kiddush, used to come to his cholent on Shabbos, used to daven minyan. And then he would learn Kinus with them, he started to learn Tanya with them. And I believe that he actually used to sneak into Torah Das every once in a while. He used to sneak into Torah Das every once in a while to learn Tanya with him from there. And in that way, Rabbi Jacobson was actually like the commando at the head of the troops, who went all the way into the I don't want to say that's from enemy territory, went into the territory, into the unconquered territory, and he began to conquer it and to bring Bofrim into Lubavitch in that sense. When our Rebbe came to, so the previous Rebbe came to America, he knew that there was already a group of young men who were attracted to Lubavitch, who were studying Chassidus, who had become close to Rabbi Jacob to Lubavitch. In fact, there was a group that had actually gone to Akvatsk, starting with my uncle Shlomo Zalman, who went in 1935 or 36, but the others went in 1939, just a few weeks before the war broke out. The war broke out, they all had to run back to America. But the point was, I believe there were 10 in that group. It was a group of 10, I don't know if all 10 actually went, but it was a group of 10 Bachrim who had come close to Rebbe Jacobson, learning Chassidus, they felt themselves Chassidim of the Rebbe, and they decided to go to Akvatsk, which was a small town near Warsaw, outskirts of Warsaw, which at that time was the center where the yeshiva was, the Bab yeshiva was at that time in the was. And so, they had actually gone to a Tzvatz to learn. So when the Rebbe came here, they had to run back to the Rebbe came here, he knew that the Rebbe was a group of Bachim that were joining the yeshiva. So as soon as they started yeshiva, they came over here. Eventually, the building in 770 was settled, and you had the building started. They came. But, I'm leading up to this. So the Friedrich Rebbe's shita was that we have to give the Torah and the Sidis and the Derech and the Hashpah and all of the Derech of Sidis had to be given to the Americans in the same way that it was given to Russia. It was not easy. It wasn't easy. Russian students from Lubavitch from the years from 1890s until 1930s. It was not easy. There was a lot of serious nefesh, and the center of Torah learning in the world at that time was in Europe, and it was a very strong center. There were many great yeshivas where Bachrim sat and learned years, studied for years, and studied. There was really a very high level of Torah knowledge at that time. Of course, it shifted after the war came to America. And now it's shifted back to Eretz Yisrael, I believe. I believe that now Eretz Yisrael is the center of Torah learning. America still has it also, but I believe that Eretz Yisrael is more than America. But at that time it was in Europe. In America, you were like the little sister or the little brother who had been in Europe before the war. The Rebbe says, I want to have the yeshiva, say just like that. Torah Das was a very fine yeshiva. But in Torah Das, many of the Bachrim went to college in the afternoon. It wasn't a complete devotion to Torah. And Chaim lived the same things. Many of the Bachrim were studying Chaim, studying 3, 4 o'clock. Then they went to Brooklyn College, one city college, and then college, and then went to Parnassa. And Sakter hadn't set up the yeshivas. The Chassidish yeshivas weren't set up yet at that time. They hadn't come yet with any knowledge, because they came after the war. So the Rebbe was making yeshiva, which was very different, more of a European style yeshiva. But what I meant to say was that as much as the Bachrim of America would have liked to be like the European students, the lifestyle was so different that you didn't walk into yeshiva with the same mentality, with the same attitude, with the same lifestyle as a Bachrim in Russia or in Europe did. My uncle Avram once told me a story. This story is known. People have told over this story. Probably in the middle 40s, when some of the Russian or European students had come already here, from Poland or from Russia, and some had gotten out, or maybe it had to be the middle 40s because he was still in yeshiva at the time. Avram was still in yeshiva. And there was competition between the Americans and the European students. This was like, the two things. First of all, it was a chauvinism that each group wants to know. We have a better approach. We have a better accomplishments and so on. It was healthy. It was a healthy type of competition, and it was probably a subconscious, subliminal type of competition that existed between the European Bachrim here and the American Bachrim. But sometimes the American boys would act out a little bit more in order to show their superiority, their supposed or imagined superiority. So my uncle Avram said that once the previous Rebbe, called him into his office. He was a Bachrim yeshiva. It must have been 43, 44, because he got married at 44, 5, he was married already. So it must have been 43 or 44. And evidently the Rebbe had gotten wind of this friendly competitiveness that existed in the Beis Medrash. And the Rebbe said to him, I want to tell you something. What is the difference between a fire that's a fire of logs and a fire of charcoal? So the Rebbe said a fire of logs, you light the fire of logs is usually a very big flame, but afterwards it's very hard to keep the fire going on the logs. And often you get a big flame at the beginning, but then the fire just peters out. So when you have charcoal, you don't see any big flames. There's an intense hidden heat, but it keeps burning, 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 and burning. The Rebbe said, I want you to know that's the difference between the Americans and the Russians. The Americans are like the fire of the coal. You can get all heated up, all fired up, a big flame, big flame. But very often afterwards, it cools down and the fire disappears. So the Russians, I want you to know that even though they may not have that big flame, but they have the burning fire inside of them, And that head seat that's in them is going to keep going for a very long time. And you have to be able to learn to get that quality in you also, not just be the flash of fire that goes up, but you have to get that onto yourself also. So that competition was there. When our Rebbe came to America in the early 40s, and he began to work as the Rebbe's head of the Rebbe's educational programs, Americans and so on, other things, he began to reach out to find young Bachrim who had the leanings to start working on outreach, start working on chinuch, start working on teaching others, and so on. And the Rebbe became, for those young American guys, he became like the torch of leadership they saw in the previous Rebbe. They're very close. David Raskin used to tell a story. David Raskin, who was the head of Chabad, he's Balkoyer, he's considered a tremendous Chassidish Yid who was here. He was our Mashpia in Yeshiva in the early days, in the early days of Yeshiva, he was Mashpia. David Raskin used to tell the story that when the Russians came in 1946, 47, 48, the previous Rebbe was not well in the last years. He had been paralyzed, and he had a problem, he had a speech deficiency. And not everybody was able to understand what he said. And the rule was that if anyone wanted to go into Yeshivas in the previous Rebbe, so one of the maskirim, one of the secretaries of the Rebbe would go along with you, and he would be the interpreter, he would be the matargim. He would interpret what the Rebbe was answering you, he would say that. He would translate that. I once went to the Satmar Rebbe, the Satmar Rebbe. When someone came from Australia who had to go to the Satmar Rebbe about something in Australia, about the Hungarian community in Melbourne, in Sydney, Australia. So he asked me if I would go along with him. I drove him up to Kiryas Yael. This was the Rebbe, the Satmar Rebbe was there. And the Rebbe accepted Yechidus, but always, if you went into Yechidus, you had to go one of the Maskirim, and usually Rabbi Simpson was only one of the others. But Yakov Hecht didn't need anybody. And Yakov Hecht, who was a young man of 22, 23 years old, he went into the Rebbe, and he was able to be the translator. And then my father brought many people into Yechidus, and he was the one who went in. And the Bachrim, the other young man, was so jealous of him. It's a good jealousy, it's a healthy jealousy. They want to. So David Raskin said that he protested. He protested, I'm not sure, maybe to Simpson or Rabbi Simpson, who was one of the Maskirim, but another one of the Maskirim, he protested. And they told him, you have to go in with the Maskir, and Yankelak can go in on his own. So whatever it was, he's able to, because he's on that status. Despite the point that had that close connection to the previous Rebbe, his real connection, and I mean much more intense, on a daily basis, on an ongoing basis, on a very involved basis, was with our Rebbe. My father used to say, every once in a while, sometimes he would say to the Rebbe, he told him to us, we say to the Rebbe, he says, Ich bin gewähnt der Chosven der Rebbe, der Rebbe ist geworden der Rebbe. My father would tell the Rebbe, I was the Rebbe's chassid before the Rebbe became the Rebbe. That was his connection to our Rebbe in the early years. And in fact, he was and our Rebbe, taking in people like my father, and there were several others, he was actually doing what the previous Rebbe said when he said America's Nishtanish. He had fulfilled it. He was able to get the imagination, the heart, the highest of the American Bachrim. He was able to get it. He was able to build it. He was able to nurture it. He was able to develop it. And he was able to bring it to a reality point that was to the highest potential, was brought out into the kinetic, into the real, by our Rebbe. And that was his connection with the young Americans in the 1940s. And Yankelak was only one of several, but he is a good example to use to understand the Rebbe's connection with that group of Hasidim. Now, it just so happened my father worked very closely with him. My father, at that time, release time, which was the primary project of the National Committee. Today, National Committee is the umbrella organization, including Hadar Hatorah, and a half a dozen other people, all the camps upstate, including Shalos Center, upstate, it's that, those. But at that time, in the 1940s, the first project, which the previous Rebbe instituted, in 1941, there is the minutes of the meeting of Americas in which the Rebbe was present, the previous Rebbe was present, our Rebbe was present, and the leaders of Lubavitch in America were all present at that meeting. And in the meeting of the minutes, it says that we've started a program for public school children called Release Time, and now we have to establish an organization which is going to be the organization that's going to take the responsibility of running those programs, and therefore they established a committee for furtherance of Jewish education, which was established by the previous Rebbe, and in fact, our Rebbe signed as a trustee, as the original trustee of the organization, which is National Committee. Not in 1941, but in 1953 or 52, there was a corporate papers that had to be put in a second time because of a change of a word in the name, so the Rebbe signed on as one of the 6 trustees of the National Committee. The Rebbe is signed in only 3 corporations, Machti Yisrael, Merkez, and National Committee. These are the 3 corporations the Rebbe is signed on. Getting back to the 40s, so the Rebbe's vision and the Rebbe's his charisma was so directed to be able to take these young people. You see the pictures of Rabbi Hecht and the Rebbe in the early parades, in the teens, in 1957, in 1960, 1963. When they stand next to each other, there's a certain I sense it. I know that it was like that, so I can sense it that way. There was a certain love that existed between them, and that was a love which was nurtured by the Rebbe because he saw that these were the American Hasidim who would become the true Hasidim of the previous Rebbe and then of our Rebbe, and they were the ones who would carry on and continue to do the shlichiyos, all the different missions that the Rebbe wanted them to accomplish. So, going way back to the early years, and going to, they said, the 30s when Rebbe Jacobson was retired, and then in the 40s when our Rebbe himself showed such care to them and such love to them. And he worked together. My father worked with him in the America's office, which was Rabbi Chadakov's main office, the little room as soon as you walk into 770 on the right side, which used to be the center of the whole world at one point, because the whole world went through that office for many, many years. That was where the Rebbe worked, out of that office. But probably he worked out of his own room also, but he worked out of that office too. And people like my father and others who had come in to work in the various divisions of the organization worked with him in there. But Rabbi J.J. Hecht's connection to him was very, very deep, and it was very strong. And my father said that he once, when he became a Rav in East Flatbush in the Shul in 1947, so he once, they made a seal on Mishnayos. And the whole Shisha said the Mishnah, he had to make a seal. So he learned through it. When he came to the end, he had to say a drasha, or a seal drasha. Somehow he couldn't think of something, how to approach it. He couldn't think of how to do it. So he was working with the Rebbe one day, and he said to the Ramash, he said, I need a drasha for a siyum of Shisha Siddur Mishnah. Nema pencil. The Rebbe said, Nema pencil. He grabbed out a pad of paper, and he grabbed out a pencil, and he wrote a whole drasha on the siyum of Shisha Siddur Mishnah. Just like that. And of course, he used that drasha afterwards, and it was very, very well received. But the connection between the Rebbe and Rabbi Hecht was such that if Rabbi Hecht asked him if he needed a drasha, he said, "Have a pencil." He gave him. There was a gilui, there was an effulgence of wisdom and Torah from the Rebbe because his Talmud requested it. In Samach Vav, in Chassidus and Samach Vav, we find that it talks about the power that we have, the power in Seichel that you have, that Dafka, when the Talmud asks the Shaila by a Rav, it awakens within the teacher a much higher level of revelation of Chachma, and it's Dafka when the student asks the question that the teacher is able to somehow go higher in his own his own inner chachma, and he finds the answers. Everything is. If he hadn't been questioned, he wouldn't have reached that level. So I'm guessing that when Rebbe Yakov had to ask the Rebbe for that, the Rebbe opened up a very high level of his own Torah and his own knowledge of Torah, and he was revealed at that time to his chassid. This is a little bit, just to get a little bit of an idea. I speak about Rebbe Jacobson because, as I said, Rebbe Jacobson was the most loving person you could imagine. And when he realized that he had to make yeshiva, he was going through his second cycle of his life. Which the first cycle of his life, he had to first get the American Bachim, who were already observant. And they already, in a sense, yeshiva Bachim. But he had to bring them up to the higher level of becoming Chassidim. Then, when he started at Hadar Hatorah in the 60s, so then he said, oh, this is my second life, my second cycle of life. Now I'm going to go get those who are not yet even yeshiva Bachim, and he devoted his life to that. This whole mitzvah, that was just the essence of his life, was devoted to that without any question. Rebbe Jacobson, and he brought my father into Hadar Hatorah for whatever reason. My father ended up, over the years that he served the Rebbe, there were a lot of times when he ended up not in his own organization, but becoming either a part of a board of directors or actually getting to have to run the school for a while of other schools. Rebbe Jacobson was just one of those things, and Jacobson brought Rebbe Hecht in. I'm not sure Rebbe Jacobson felt that Rebbe Hecht would remain permanently, but he needed Rebbe Hecht's help at that time, basically for finances. But eventually Rebbe Hecht came in and stayed permanently, and he became the dean of Hadar Hatorah. His official title was dean, but he was, of course, the whole background of Hadar Hatorah. But there was a time when Rabbi Hecht was asked to go into Beis Rivka. He sat in Beis Rivka for a few years. He actually ran Beis Rivka for a few years. One period when there was a problem with Beis Rivka. So there were other things that sometimes, and then with other things, there were other things the Rebbe asked Rabbi Hecht to take responsibility here, whatever the case. But, or I shouldn't say but, and so, if we're sitting here today, it's such a beautiful Beis Medrash, and as this point in the development of Hadar Hatorah, Baruch Hashem, over all these years, with hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of Talmidim have gone through Hadar Hatorah, so we can see, we can say that all of the efforts that Jacobson, Hecht, and the Rebbe, of course, I remember when Hadar Hatorah was 3 Bachrim learning in what was then the women's balcony in 770, when it was still only the section that's right next to the building. It's the first section, which had once been the parking area. I remember that also. There was a driveway into the parking lots under 770. That's what was first. In fact, the first parade that I was at, 1956, the November parade, the first parade that I was at, 1956, we were down in the parking lot. That time was still a parking lot. And then they built this. It was open. Then they built a sukkah for sukkahs. And then, because of the crowd, I remember the Beis Medrash, when you walk into 770, right? The first room on the right is the American's office, or Chadakov's office. The next room is the small Beis Medrash. Okay? I remember on Shabbos Mevarchim, my father walked up, and I walked up with him, and everybody was inside. Okay, the Rebbe sat in the front of the room, which is under that window which goes to the next room. He sat there on the stage, on a table, and there were pictures, there was something that were from Farbrengen at that time. And then the Chassidim were around, and they had benches at the next to the walls. There was a bench, but in the back, the bench was not next to the wall because there weren't that many people. So the bench was a few feet. We were running around as kids. We were running around behind the back bench, but during the Farbrengen. That was the whole Farbrengen. That was the size of the Lubavitch at that time in Brooklyn. That we were able to run behind that bench. We were able to run around. Can't say exactly what year it was, in the early 50s. And then that room became too small, so they had to take what was first the area of the parking area next to the 770, and they built a giant sukkah. But after sukkahs, they put a tarp on the top, and that became the place where the Rebbe Farbrengen in there. So on Shabbos and Baruch we Farbrengen in there without a microphone, obviously, other than the Farbrengens that were weekdays that he had a microphone, so it was better, a little bit better. When they built that building, the first building, which was not part of 784, 788, but was just the space between 770 and the first apartment building, and they built that space. there was a women's section which was on a balcony facing the front of the shul. During the week, and that balcony, there were three things. The balcony was half the size of this room. That's how big the balcony was. There was a one room higher up, so there was a little. So like this. First of all, there was the koilel was there in that room. Ziskin, Rabbi Ziskin was the bishop. Rabbi Ziskin, yeah. Yechil's father, Yeshver, Frank Yeshver, sorry, Yeshver. Rabbi Goldberg's father, Rabbi Ziskin was. He was the Rosh HaKoilel at that time. He was another person like Rabbi Jacobson, the sweetest man that you ever will meet. But he was the sweetest, most loving person you can imagine. That was Rabbi Ziskin. So there was the Koilel, and there was a group of Bachrim that didn't want to sit inside the base bench, so we sat up there also and learned. And there was a Hadar Hatorah. All three programs were going on in that room. That was the beginning of a Hadar Hatorah. The Bachrim who came to learn, whoever was teaching them was there, and so that became the beginning of Hadar Hatorah. So today, Baruch Hashem, we have a building, we have a dormitory, we have a expansion, a beautiful expansion now, and all the additions and all the extensions and all the permutations and all the connections and so on and so forth, and all of the alumni that we're so proud of over all these years. So Baruch Hashem, that it was a good beginning that started then, and it's continuing now, and it will continue this Hashem at Adis Mashiach until Mashiach comes. As the Rebbe used to say, the Rebbe would talk about many times at the end of the Sichos, and I told this over to somebody this week. I have a cousin who was dying in South Africa. He was just here this week for a visit. His family is actually from the Lubavitcher family, but he himself learned the Snag Yeshivas, and it's basically literature. And we were talking, he came here for a few days, so he was by us with the family. Him and his wife came. We know 50 years ago we were in Erev Yisrael, so we had a kesher with him. So anyway, so we had a very nice time. And we were talking. What did I want to bring out here? What was I just saying? Huh? Okay, well, that's still Chaim. Okay, the Chaim I'll remember it soon. The Chaim. Those are the ones that I translated. And I worked full-time in the city of Kinus office at that time, translating. And every time I came to the end of the season, the Rebbe said, the end of the season, they would say, and we'll go to Yerushalayim, we'll go to Harabayas, we'll go to Yerushalayim, we'll go to the base of Harabayas, we'll go to the base of Migdash, we'll stay in the Godels. He spoke about going to the base of Migdash, standing in the base of Migdash, looking into the Kodesh and seeing the Kohen lighting the menorah or whatever it was he was talking about at that particular time. In the words of the Rebbe, you could see that the Rebbe was standing at the base of Mikdash. The way he said it, it was living in front of his eyes. I mean, I had to translate it, put it to English. It wasn't that same thing. Whenever you translate, it doesn't carry the full spirit of the original language. But the way the Rebbe said it, you could see, and I sensed it. When I was translating his words, I sensed it because I heard it on the tape. I wasn't in child because I wasn't here because I heard it clearly. So I would come suddenly working, and I would get usually the rough draft from the Hebrew seals or from the Yiddish seals, and I would work from that to translate. But whenever there was a Farbrengen that was on video, and you could actually see it, and I would watch the Rebbe's face and hear the words that he said, you could see that the Rebbe is standing in the base of Mikdash. He's standing looking into the Kodesh, looking into the Kodesh, seeing the Kohen God lighting the menorah, seeing the Kohen God reading the Keturos, whatever they're talking about. And when he said that Mashiach is going to come and that we're going to be there, we're going to stand there, you could see that he was living with it at the moment. This is what he saw. This is what he lived with. I mentioned this to my cousin. I want to explain to him that the Rebbe's understanding, and the Rebbe's yearning and pining for Mashiach was something that was so real to him, was something that he lived with, and he felt it, and he saw it he saw it with his physical eyes. He saw that in the base of English. He told me. He said he once asked. My cousin told him that he once asked Benjamin Klein, "Does the Rebbe have a sense of humor?" He was once sitting by Benjamin Klein by his sibling. He said, "Does the Rebbe have a sense of humor?" So he said, "Yeah." Yes, his Rebbe has a sense of humor. So he said, "So tell me a story where the Rebbe has a sense of humor." He said, "Once standing by the Rebbe by dollars, and a woman came over to the Rebbe, and she asked a bracha for a child. He didn't know if it was that she had no children or she had one child, but she asked a bracha for a child. So the Rebbe gave a bracha for a child. So then the woman said, "But when?" The Rebbe said, "At least 9 months." But I said the Rebbe had a sense of humor because why did I remember this story? There was a different thing that I wanted to say. And that is that which emphasizes the Rebbe's love for he had a special love for him. Okay? Everybody, when you have a bar mitzvah, you got a letter from the Rebbe. When you have a chasana, you have a few weeks ago I was at a wedding. There was a whole fight if they should read the Rebbe's letter because one side of the family was not a Bab's side, will they read the Rebbe's letter? Won't they read the Rebbe's letter? Okay, the whole issue. I said, what's the big deal over it? That tzaddik gives a bracha. What's the shlech? What could be bad if you read the Rebbe's letter? You believe it, you don't believe it, but there's no negative. Yeah, they read the Rebbe's letter, and it was translated. It was like nothing. So everybody gets a letter. You have the letter that your father got by his wedding. You have the letter your grandfather got by his wedding. You have a letter for a bris. There's a letter for a bas mitzvah, and so on. Right? Everybody has their letters of the Rebbe for all of their simchas. There's only one letter that every time you have to read it at a simcha, they're going to have to mention Yakov. And this was the Rebbe's sense of humor. The Rebbe's sense of humor is that he only wrote one letter in his life for a pidyon abed. People come to me and he said, "You know how to pidyon abed?" I said, "I read the letter about your pidyon abed." Thank you very much. It is my theory that the Rebbe only wrote one letter about pidyon abed to Hecht, and therefore everybody who makes a pidyon abed who wants to read the Rebbe's letter is going to have to mention Yakov Hecht as about pidyon abed. Whether you like it or not, you're going to have to mention it. Because he was the one who got the letter from the Rebbe about the pidyon abed. So the Rebbe had a sense of humor also. I teach a class in Beis Rivka. I teach a 12th grade class in Beis Rivka, which special class that we created in Beis Rivka. It's a Torah Mother class. It's Torah and science, Torah and so very often we come with different. We come and talk about different things in the class. So the question is, wasn't the Rebbe against college? Okay, so I have my derech of answering and so on and so forth. But was the Rebbe against knowledge, secular knowledge? I cannot say that Rebbe was against secular knowledge. And college is a separate question. College is not secular knowledge. College very often has nothing to do with knowledge at all. It's just a social setting for people who have nothing better to do with themselves. We babysit for several million kids who barely graduated from high school, and we allow them to get to booze out at the weekends and go to their Greek clubs. And so college is not the question. But was the Rebbe against secular knowledge? I have to answer, the Rebbe was not against secular knowledge. First of all, we need secular knowledge for a lot of things in Torah. We know that the Rebbe was for certain things in technology. He was word if the Rebbe had known, my whole class attacked me. Rabbi Hecht, how can you say if the Rebbe knows everything? So I was put in my place. Okay, so that's how we got past that. I got myself out of it. But their question was, did the Rebbe embrace the internet? David called me that night, talking. He finds out how terrible the internet is. He starts telling me, I said, listen, I go on 10 minutes in the morning to my emails, I go on 10 minutes at the emails, I don't even know what the internet looks like. So don't talk, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't have a cell phone, so I don't know what's on the cell phone either. I don't own a cell phone. So I have no idea how to turn it on, even what to use it. Okay, but the point was, what? Today I went to a doctor, I was in doctor's offices for 5 hours. Guess what? Nobody could bother me. I sat there, I brought some paperwork to do with me. I sat there, I had to sit for 5 hours in 2 doctor's offices. I went, I'm okay and so on. But nobody called me on my cell phone because I don't have a cell phone. And you know what? Nobody called me afterwards and say, we needed you today. Nobody needed me. Nobody needed me. So David Klein says, Rabbi Sholem, you forget that the internet was formed after the Rebbe had a stroke. There was no internet before, when the Rebbe was still conscious, before the stroke. There was no internet. He says Kazin was just beginning to make the bare outlines of something on an internet, but the whole internet didn't exist. Therefore, it is possible that if the Rebbe were here today, he would put the internet into that group of technology which he doesn't like. So I cannot say that the Rebbe embraced technology completely. Which brings you back to the point that I wanted to bring out over here. I said, I know all about it. And you know what? But we know that the Rebbe was for radio. We know that. We know that because the Rebbe supported. Rabbi Hecht used to do the radio. And you know, after Gimel Tammuz, we actually found an envelope in which there were 1,000 or 2,000, about 2,000, $1,200 of $50 bills, which the Rebbe had given to the Mazkiris to give to Rabbi Hecht, because he used to pay for half the cost of the radio time that was given when the Farbrengens were on radio and WEVD. In those years, WEVD was the Jewish station, and my father used to reserve the time at night for the Farbrengens, and he would translate and explain what was going on, and so on. He was like the MC. And the Rebbe would pay him half, and it was an envelope in which the Rebbe says, "Taf." You know, my father had written in a report that he had that the Farbrengen was. It was good. And this was the cost that we had to pay. The Rebbe gave him a Cheshvan, and he said, "Here's my status," and it's sent out $1,250 bills. Eventually, of course, those $50 bills we redeemed them by people for 10 times, for 100 times their value, whatever it was, because of that time. It was the early years. I'm talking about 25 years ago. We found this, but so the Rebbe radio. We know the Rebbe supported, but if the Rebbe is support, we know the Rebbe was against television. That we know. He never said anything for television. He always spoke against television. So we know that he was against television. Now, okay, he allowed video films to be taken of him, so therefore you allowed people to see videos. That was allowed. But the internet is a whole different world. And therefore, those Rabbanim who today are asked the question, should our community, should our society allow internet in homes? Because there are those communities which do not allow the children to attend the yeshivas or the girls' schools if the families have internet in their homes. By the way, I'm protected. It was all my children were married before the internet got into my house also. So nobody come back to me and tell me how to do have internet in your house now. No children in my house. Okay? So, again. So the question is, how come those communities have said that it's usher to have internet in your house? You need an internet for business, have the internet in your office, but not in your home. Etc. How come in Lubavitch we don't have that restriction? And the answer that we heard is that the Rebbe embraced technology. This is technology. Why shouldn't we have it? You can watch the convention. You know what? I don't even watch the convention on the internet. Forget show the answer nice. But anyway, so I leave it a question mark. I'm leaving that with a question mark. As far as the internet is concerned, you gentlemen can go out and try to find the answer to that question, and don't take maybes and don't take broad answers which say, but the Rebbe did, hello? Did the Rebbe ever say that you can use the internet? If anybody says yes, please tell them to go to sleep and to wake up again. Or maybe he's asleep already now. Maybe he has to first wake up. Because there was no internet when the Rebbe gave us any directives that we have in writing, or at least that we have it from his own voice saying it. So therefore it's a whole new invention, it's a whole new creation, it's a whole new technology, etc. But let's go back to the beginning of what I was saying. 60 years ago, Rabbi Hecht had a Kinus with the Rebbe. And he was talking about Chinuch. And he spoke about, at that time, children graduating from yeshiva high school, and the question was college, immediately after high school. And the Rebbe said, it's a terrible thing. Why? The Rebbe could have said, you're not allowed to learn Limudei Chayil. He didn't say that. What the Rebbe said was as follows. The Rebbe said to Rabbi Hecht, in the way the yeshiva system is set up nowadays, this is the 1950s, early 60s, the way the yeshiva is set up, it's a half a day Limudei Kodesh, half a day Limudei Chol. Let's say a child goes through 12 years of that schooling. He gets 12 years of that schooling. Okay? You learn the half a day Limudei Kodesh, half a day Limudei Chol. The average child, if you stop him in the middle of the day and ask him, which is more important, the Limudei Kodesh or the Limudei Chol? He said, well, my Rebbe showed up 40 minutes late this morning. Nobody had the Gemaras. They were allowed to go find the Gemara someplace and put up in the closet. They didn't know where it was. Nobody had a notebook to write down anything. My English teacher, as soon as he walked in, he opened up his roll book, he marked attendance. Everybody had to have a book. If you didn't have a book, you got a mark. If you didn't have this, you had the merit, so on and so forth. So the Rebbe said, my father, that because of the management of the classes, the difference between the Limudei Kodesh and the Limudei Chol, the child ends up at the end of 12 years imagining, because of his own perception or misconception, imagining that the Limudei Chol, the secular studies, somehow had a more important position in his life. He says that cannot happen. That we cannot allow to happen. And therefore the Rebbe said, what I want is, after you finish 12 years, you should go 2 years at least only to study Limudei Kodesh. And the yeshiva of Limudei Kodesh. After the 2 years, we'll talk about what he has to do afterwards. And that was the Rebbe's sheet. And now, Rabbi said, there are many things that the Rebbe innovated over his years and over his lifetime. The whole concept of outreach. My brother-in-law, Pinchas Feldman, I once said to him, what's the difference between Lubavitch, this is 40 years ago, 50 years ago I asked him, what's the difference between Lubavitch? Everybody outreach, even then already was outreach. Why you was outreach? The good that hadn't started, there was outreach. He says, you don't understand. He said, all the other meisters, all the other yeshivas, all the other Kinus, all the other movements, that's Gevura, Teferes, that's a Chayy Yisrael. Lubavitch is Chesed. The Rebbe's sheet is to reach out and to go out and to help people and to reach out to people and to bring Torah to everybody. So this is Midas HaChesed. The others, this is Chesed Shebegvura. This is Chesed Shebetiferes. It's Chesed Shebenetzach. But Chesed Shebechesed, that's Lubavitch. Using it as an analogy, as a metaphor. Just to say, Chesed Shebechesed, that's it. The Rebbe's Shita was that Shita. So what happened is that many Shitas today, every organization in the world, I'm a Rav in the shul, every second morning a person comes to Tzedakah to raise a kid in the Eretz Yisrael, we bring in all the Rechokim, all those who are far away, we bring them in to bring Yiddishkeit. My yeshivas of Bali Tshuva. It's 5,000 yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael of Bali Tshuva. I don't know where they are, but by the amount of collectors that come to America to collect money for yeshivas of Bali Tshuva, there's about 5,000 yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. Everybody uses that line because that's the line. Where did it come from? Because everybody saw that what the Rebbe did was the most important thing to do in the world. What the Rebbe did was the best thing to do in the world. What the Rebbe did was the most successful thing in the world. Everybody jumped on the bandwagon today. So today everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing Kiruv. Everybody's out for this. The funny thing is, I don't know if you're familiar with the yeshiva movement in America, but the yeshiva movement in America today follows a shita which says that when you finish high school with Limudei Kodesh, Limudei Chol, you have to go to Eretz Yisrael for a year or two to learn only Torah. That's what the Rebbe said to Rebbe 60 years ago. He told me. And you know what? It happened. I know I'm a rabbi in a community shul. Many of my kids finished high school from half a dozen different yeshiva high schools in New York, Queens, Long Island, Brooklyn, Manhattan, MTA. I have a cousin at MTA, one of the top Rosh Yeshivas in MTA in the high school, Michael Hecht. He's a law professor also. His job for many, many years was to go to Eretz Yisrael in the year that the students were in yeshiva and to convince them to come back the next year to go to YU. Because a lot of them didn't want to go back to YU, they wanted to stay in yeshiva. So his job was to get them to come back to YU, to go to Yeshiva University, because many of them stayed in Eretz Yisrael, they can start learning. I have boys from my community that ended up sitting 10 years in Kollel, because after they finished high school, they went for 1 year to learn, they ended up sitting 10 years in Kollel, 20 years in Kollel. As a result, and these were boys from, their parents are not B'nai Torah, their parents are average business people, who come from countries where they didn't have a proper education. But these boys went to yeshiva high schools in New York, which at the end of that, if you asked them which was more important, they would have said exactly like the Rebbe said, that the Limudei Chol was more important, because of all the extraneous aspects of the Limudei Chol. But when they spent a year or two in Eretz Yisrael in yeshiva, it changed their whole life. And those who come back to America and go back to the colleges, it's a whole different thing. These are B'nai Torah, these are people who are Kavei to the Torah. They make sure that during the week they go to Shiurim, they study Torah, their house is a house of Torah, they have Yediyah, they have Halacha, they know what it is and so on. This was what the Rebbe said, as I said, 60 years ago, the Rebbe said this to Rebbe Hecht, and this is what the whole world, the whole Torah world, has adopted this pattern, and this shita, this idea. Now, the Rebbe wasn't, I can't say that the Rebbe was against secular knowledge, because the Rebbe himself was knowledgeable in so many areas of science. Starting with electrical engineering, which was his field, but also in all that, I deal with these letters of the Rebbe on science, because it's my course that I give. But when you look into the letters that the Rebbe writes in science, and there are several books which have been printed with the Rebbe's letters on science, you see that the Rebbe was a person who had a solid knowledge of these sciences. And we know that the Rebbe spent time. Now, I have a friend from Yeshiva University who says, we used to say, Yasha Ben Soloveitchik, the Rosh Yeshiva, Yasha Soloveitchik was Rosh Yeshiva of YU, he would tell stories to his students about the years that he was together with the Rebbe in Berlin. In Berlin and then in Sorbonne. In Sorbonne, I'm not sure, but mainly in Berlin. But it's and he would tell them, he says, yeah, the Rebbe was sitting and studying in the class, and he always had a Gemara at the table with him. He always had a Gemara with him. So he had the ability, his mind was such a great mind, to be able to listen to the lecture. At the same time, in between, he was learning his Torah and he was learning. I was once by when Rabbi Gerari died, so I went to Menachem Avram's children. And just then there was some Tosha of people there from the old Chassidim, from the old literature people like Keti Menachem Avram. So one of the person told me a story. He said that he was in France. He was in France at the time the Rebbe was in France. And he used to go to the library of the Sorbonne, and he used to study manuscripts. This person, he says, I very often saw the Rebbe in the library. The Rebbe was studying manuscripts, Torah manuscripts, for example. He said, one day I was in the library, and I was working on a page. It was getting late, and I was trying to decipher the wording on this page, also a Jewish manuscript, and I couldn't get it. And he said, I decided I was going to tear out the page from the book and put it into my pocket. This is what the fellow told me. He said, across the library room, the Rebbe caught my eye, and the Rebbe knew what I was going to do and never said. I heard this from the person himself, who had dared to do something that who signaled to him. He said to him, don't do it. And he said, I didn't do it. He said, I knew who the Rebbe was. He says, and I didn't do it because of that. So, the Rebbe's knowledge was certainly a knowledge of knowing that without any question. I mean, the Rebbe was the one who rejuvenated the limit of the Rambam, without a question. But the Rebbe, in a sense, has a lot in common with the Rambam, because the Rambam was the idea of all the sciences of his time, which he utilized to the highest intensity in Torah. He knew where it was necessary to use all of those sciences in Torah. And the Rebbe also knew which sciences were necessary in order to be able to deal with certain inyanim in the world which would strengthen Torah. So, getting back to the original question, was the Rebbe against secular knowledge? For that I could say I don't think he was against secular knowledge. College is a whole different story. And many of you could probably tell me better than I know, although I did work on campus for several years as a campus shliach, way back in the early 70s. I don't want to get into that. I worked on campus, so I'm aware of what goes on in college also, but the Rebbe definitely held that, and again, the Rebbe's point was that every student, every child who grows up and learns Torah has to recognize that Torah is above everything else. That the knowledge of Torah comes first. If you need another knowledge of another science, of another discipline, of another branch of knowledge, of worldly knowledge, okay. But Torah is first. And therefore you have to devote a certain amount of time in your life. You have to devote exclusively for the study of Torah so that it should encompass you completely. You should encompass Torah completely. And that way you know that you're a Torah Jew. Then if you need the other things you got, even in the Hadar Hatorah, I'm sure there were students in the Hadar Hatorah that after they finished learning, that the Rebbe told them to go back to university for certain different fields that they were in. Eventually they became very chasheva with different people that we know, of course, in the various areas of science, of math, and so on. You know that the Rebbe's brother was a mathematician. The Rebbe was a professor in England, the one who lived in England. And when what was the mathematician who used to come to the Rebbe? Rosenberg, yes. Professor Rosenblum, yes. He used to come to the Rebbe's Farbrengen. So they brought the Rebbe a manuscript of his brother's math writings. And he had given it to Rosenblum because he wanted Rosenblum to work with other mathematicians and to work it over, to put it into a publishable form. And there's, I believe it's one of the Farbrengen. I think it's on tape. The Rebbe asked him, what?
It's on video.
It's on a video. But the problem was,
no one knew what it meant.
Yeah, but we have to understand that. We have to understand what that means. It wasn't that his knowledge of mathematics was a quantum leap above everybody else's knowledge. His knowledge was his knowledge. He had written it in the format that he used, which was maybe different from other formats. The problem was that Rosenblum and others didn't want to, believe me, they didn't want to spend the time to work on it as much time as they did. That was a problem. Because if they had put the time into it, the Rebbe had hoped they would, then they would have been able to do what the Rebbe would. There was an article about a few years ago by a doctor or psychiatrist.
Rosenblum did work on it. He said, I don't have a student to work on it, but I will work on it.
But he didn't work on it enough to finish it to be able to be published. That's what happened. The reality was that it was never put into a condition that it could be published. But my theory is that they didn't put enough time into it. There was an article written a few years ago. I forgot which Jewish magazine about a doctor who said, and I remember because I worked here in Crown Heights in that year, in 71, 72, we had some students who had been into transcendental meditation, TM. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who at that time was the great TM, transcendental meditation teacher. Now, we know that all of the Zen and all of the meditation, yoga meditation that comes from India is always tied to Avodah Zarah. It always is, even though they claim it's not, and even though now also you have to be very, very careful. There are people who study yoga, they go into yoga, you have to be very, very careful. Because there's always Avodah Zarah involved in it. And you remember who it was who had come to us from TN, he was in the Hadar Hatorah for a while. He said to me, Rabbi Hecht, what are you talking about? Whenever we go into the thing, the first thing you do is you make a sacrifice, you put on those altar, we burn incense. Of course it's Avodah Zarah. He says, of course it is. So absolutely, it's Avodah Zarah. And he was there, he had contact. But there was a point in which the Rebbe wanted that doctors should work on meditation completely separate from religious thought. Not even Torah meditation. Purely medical meditation. And he wanted to stay away from any yoga or transcendental meditation which connected it to the meditation which at that time was coming from India, because all of that had Avodah Zarah in it. And the Rebbe spoke to it, that the doctor wrote an article afterwards. Did you see that? Who saw that article? No, not Landis. It's about 2 or 3 years ago I saw this article. I read the whole article. The article was a very good article. He wrote about it, and he said, we tried, we experimented into it, we analyzed it, and the answer we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it, and come back to him and said we can't do it. But the point was that the Rebbe held that it could be done. The Rebbe's shita was that it could be done. The Rebbe held that it is a medical meditation which can be completely free of any religious connection, even not even Chassidus, not even the Jewish religion, and the Rebbe held that it could be done. But he needed doctors, psychiatrists to be able to work on it, and he couldn't get them to do it. That's another point interesting about the Rebbe that you have to remember. You know, the prime example that I always use when I get into this topic is, God said, when he created the world, he said, when he created the trees, he said, Eitz pri oisa pri, Teitziar is Eitz pri oisa pri, that the trees should be, that the wood should taste just like the fruit that's on the tree, and it should also give fruits besides the wood. And then a few psukim later it says that it grew Eitz oisa pri, that the trees that made fruit. But the earth didn't do what God said. How is it possible the earth didn't do what God said? Trees that the earth didn't, because the earth, there's a Rashi that says that even though it says that the trees and the grass grew on the third day, Rashi says that they didn't really grow on the third day. Rashi says they didn't come out until the sixth day. They started to grow within the earth on the third day, but they came till the surface of the earth, they didn't pop out. And only after it rained, and only after Adam was created to be able to work the earth, only then did the trees actually come out. Which leads me to another thing, but that's not connected to the Rebbe. But this point is, and that is that what happened? So what happened? The earth was not able to do what Hashem did. All the Mefarshim on there talk about this question. Why did the earth do what Hashem said? And I believe that there is a concept of Chassidus which says that sometimes there are chesaron in the Makabel, that even though the Mashpia gives the koyach, the Mashpia gives the koyach, but not always is the Makabel, the Keli, able to actually utilize that but to the koyach to the full extent that the Mashpia wanted. And it even happened with the earth. The earth somehow tried, but it couldn't do it. Now the earth, later on, the Mefarshim say that's why the earth was punished later. When it said that when Adam was punished, it also says that that the earth will give what you'll plant vegetables and you'll end up growing thorns, and that and the harsh work that a person has to do, so the earth was punished with it. But the concept that the Rebbe, in this particular case, where the Rebbe wanted the doctors to come up with a theory on with a system of meditation. The doctors couldn't do it, and that brings us also back to Chassidut too. There were many things that the Rebbe wanted us to do that sometimes he gave us the courage to do it, but we didn't fulfill it. And the most important thing was that the Rebbe wanted Mashiach to come while he was still alive. And he wanted us to be able, he wanted us to do enough to bring Mashiach. And even though he said that all that stuff, we don't even have to polish our buttons anymore. He said, because even the buttons are polished. There was an old bar that said that the only thing left to do before Mashiach comes is to polish the brass buttons that you have on your uniform. Because the buttons are polished already. We have to recognize and we have to see Mashiach. Somehow, the Rebbe gave us all the koyach, but then the Rebbe said in that famous sikh, of course, that it's up to us. Was because we had to do the tools that were necessary. He couldn't do it for us. He could teach us, he could tell us, but he couldn't do it for us. So as much as he gave us, as much as he taught us, as much as he inspired us, as much as he instilled in us, as much as he gave us koyach and so on and so forth, we weren't able to fulfill the fullness of what the Rebbe wanted from us.
He also said, Mashiach is here, he's revealed, and the Yosef is on the table, open up your eyes.
So maybe that's the problem. I'm not gonna get into exactly what the problem is, but the fact of the matter is, whichever way you interpret it, the fact of the matter is Mashiach is not here in a revealed way. Okay, so however you want to interpret it, whichever way you interpret it, the problem is that we haven't used the cartridge which we would give. That's my point. And this is the thing. The Rebbe said very often there would be people, the Rebbe would be upset because certain things he wanted to get done and it wasn't done. By the way, his own close people that were close to him very often didn't do what he wanted to be done. It didn't happen. Not everybody was on the level. Not everybody was on the level that they should have been on and be able to accomplish the things that the Rebbe gave them to do. But getting back to Rabbi Hecht, once or twice we know of examples where the Rebbe spoke to someone, one of his close chassidim, one of the people he was very close to, and he said, I want things to get done, and very often it's not accomplished. I said, but there are some people that they get it done. Not only do they get it done, but they get it done even before I tell them to do it. He said, that's Yakov. That was the way, that's how the Rebbe viewed Rabbi Hecht. That was what the Rebbe viewed Rebbe. So, the connection to the Hadar Hatorah, of course, is very, very real, very, very important. Those who are zoich to be students in the Hadar Hatorah, and Baruch Hashem, I have to say that thank God we have the best Hadar possible. So you have the best teachers, you have the best mashpiyim, you have the best hashpah, you have the best Rosh Yeshivas and so on and so forth, who lead you and who teach you and so on and so forth. You also have the special connection. Because between Rabbi Jacobs and Rabbi Hecht, you have a special connection to the power that the Rebbe gave to them. The power that the Rebbe gave them, that power is here in the Hadar Hatorah also. Let's utilize the power, right? Let's not fall back to be among those who don't utilize the power, because that could happen. So there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee, because in the end it depends on us. It depends on each and every individual. It depends on us as a group. It depends on us together. Abba Ba'achva, as Yosef said before, the unity and the brotherhood and the love is very, very important. Okay, so listen, it's a good time. The yard side of a tzaddik is a good time. The birthday of a tzaddik is a good time. Let's take some koyches. And I'm sure Rabbi Hecht is happy to share it with us. This is the building we worked in for many, many years. The Rebbe came into this building. The Rebbe came into this building. The Rebbe walked to the Rebbe. That was when Moise and Hadar Hatorah, at that time had taken in many students from overseas when the Iranian students started to come in 1978-79. So Hadar Hatorah initiated a division for foreign students. We never fit in, but it was under the auspices of Hadar Hatorah. Right? It was here. He came up
In this room?
Came out to this floor. I didn't know he came out to this floor.
The Seder was back here.
No, the Seder was downstairs. The Seder. Oh, right, the library. Right. The Seder. So the Seder was downstairs in the dining room. There were facing 200 students there, something like that, 200 Iranian students there. So we went down to the Seder, gave him a bracha, and he saw the Seder, he was very happy. When he came upstairs, my father asked the Rebbe, would you like to see my office? So the Rebbe said, okay. So on his table, there was a big table that's in our office now. In the center of the table, there was a globe on the office. So the Rebbe said to my father, I see that you're holding the whole world on your shoulders. That you carry the world on your shoulders. So my father said, and if the Rebbe supports me, I can do it. as the faucet. And then the Rebbe came, so he went there first and he came up here. Well, he came here first and then there. First there, then he came up here. So, again, this was the building the Rebbe had spent his years in. This is the building where the Rebbe came in. There's not many buildings around that the Rebbe went in. By the way, he went to a Chol Chana building also. Chol Chana sent his mother's home. He's got his mother, he said, for his mother. So that we had very special love for that. The Chol Chana building went through. These are the Meisters connected with this organization, with this umbrella, connected with Rabbi Hadar. And so, Baruch Hashem, if we are able to be in this, in the Dalet Amos, in the walls of this very, very important organization, very, very good yeshiva, so we should use that. And remember that the fact that we have these powers are given to us, in the end, it still depends on us. We have to make the moves, we have to accomplish, we have to make the sacrifices, and there's always sacrifices involved. Some are more, some are less, some are harder, some are easier. But whether it means waking up a half hour early in the morning is also sacrifice sometimes. And so on and so on and so on. Your Mashpiyah, I'm sure, will give you all the right directives on how to fulfill it. But the main thing is you have to realize that it's up to us. So let's take upon ourselves to do these things, to fulfill these things. If we didn't get it done 25 years ago, so let's get it done now to bring Mashiach, to reveal Mashiach, to bring Mashiach, however you want to interpret it. It should be revealed to the fullest measure. And as I said, when the Rebbe spoke about Mashiach and he spoke about the Beis Hamikdash, it was living, it was in front of him, he saw it. Because to him it was something that was real. It was just a question of, I don't know, flipping a switch or opening a light or doing it, because he saw everything. Let's hope that we can see that we can do it, that we can bring it, and we can reveal it, Be'ez Hashem, in very soon, and with, under all the right circumstances. Maybe, amen.
Yom Yom was recited before. First of all, I think there was a little bit of a change of the people, so they weren't here before. But there was a Jew in California, Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz, who was a shliach, worked for about many years. May his memory be a blessing for all of us. He, his gig, so to speak, his chiddush was, okay, tell me when you were born, find out what your Hebrew birthday is, and you definitely have a direct connection to the Yon Yon. And I just want to make mention that, again, I'll just read it very quickly again, but then we'll talk a little about the thing that we are gathered here on the for the birthday of Rabbi Hecht, that how appropriate and suited this Hayyim Yom was for Rabbi Hecht. Says the Rebbe that in material matters one should always look at he whose situation is lower than one's own, and thank God, and thank the good God for his kindness to him. So in Gashmias, you always look that there's people who are poorer than you, have it more difficult than you. And Baruch Hashem, you have the blessing, and it's God's kindness that you are doing better than others. In spiritual matters, one always looks at he who is higher than oneself and plead with God to grant him the intelligence to learn from others and the ability and strength to rise higher. Much of today's drive, and I say this, in fact, one of the negative drives of society today is we look at somebody else and we're jealous. And jealousy is a prelude to many, many other negative things. It's a prelude to hatred, and if Israel is everything, so then it's a prelude to a total downfall. And yet, the Rebbe in the Yom Yom points out that on the contrary, when you look at somebody and you see they have blessing, you should really first look at your blessing. And then look around people who have less than you, and therefore it will give you a certain humility and a certain thankfulness. And surely anything but God forbid you never be jealous of somebody else. Rabbi Hecht, to travel the world, and often came back to the office after visiting either a person, a home, sometimes a community, even a country, and travels. We'd come back and you talk about the affluence, the mazel, the bracha, the hatzlacha, the great abundance that this person would have. He used an expression, I'm not sure if it's a Yiddish expression or not, but he'd come back, he'd say, come to the office, that today I was in a house, a prach. Yiddish word? Okay, it's a Yiddish word. A prach. It's like awesome, is what we would say today. I just got back from a, oh, it's awesome, that house. But at the same time, had a certain love and acceptance and even a joy for the other person who received that blessing. And at the same time, whenever you looked at someone with a ruchniistic achievement, you always looked at that person with somewhat of an envy, or again, he would point it out to myself or to my siblings or to other people that, I came back, I saw, an edelkeit, I saw a refinement, I saw an energy, I saw someone studying, their eagerness and efforts, and this too gave him inspiration, and he used it to inspire others. So, being that we're gathering the day of his birthday, and the day that the Rebbe writes, perhaps it's okay to begin with a bracha that each and every one of us here participating in this Farbrengen, we should be blessed, be zoicha, that when it comes to Gashmias, we should recognize the blessings that we have and look to those who have less than us with a certain love, or a Hecht that was not only love, but also a Rachmanis. Look to see what, sometimes with a form of action or a plan of action, how to help somebody who has less and how to lift them up. And surely, when we look at someone who has with ruchnis, who has greater achievements than we have, and has greater blessings than we have, and has a higher level than we have, we should be inspired by this to simply if it's an area of study, if it's an area of action, if it's an area of love, if it's seichel, if it's intellect or emotion, or simply, as Rebbe Hecht was a man of action, simply of action that it can inspire us to do more for our fellow man. And therefore, when it comes to ruchnius, we should only be envious with an envy that it will inspire us to make change within ourselves, better ourselves. And just if I can add one line, which is the Rebbe has often said to the people, good is good and better is better. It's good, it's excellent, you're making, you're doing okay, but we know that we can all do a little bit better. And of course, by Farbrengen, you're allowed to talk to yourself out loud, so when I say you, I include you. And that we can all do a little bit more and a little bit better. Fine. On this note, I just want to add one more point. Well, actually, when Rabbi Shalom Ber started with the story, I thought he was going to tell another story, or he perked my memory to tell another story. When the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, as we refer to as the Frierdiker Rebbe, came to America in 1929. So the Hecht family was quite established there already in America. The Hecht family, of course, like every good family, there's an argument of when exactly the family came and what it is, so it depends who you ask. But I like the version the way I say it, that it was in Elimelech Hecht, came from the city of Shinov, Austria, Poland, came to the shores of America in 1880. And a few years later, went back home to bring his family, and he came back here in 1887. My father always spoke that it was the blizzard of 87. Not that he remembers, it was his father. It was the blizzard of 88. Oh, okay. Blizzard of 88, what the blizzard was in?
Stalin was the first winter, they came before January.
as every good family, there's difference of exactly when it came, and of course, we always tell the story wrong, but somebody has a little bit better. In any event, in 1929, the previous Rebbe came to America. He was staying in Manhattan, and they asked him to say Chassidus. That was the terminology that was used then. And the Rebbe said that if they're asking him to say Chassidus, which means to say Farbrengen, he would like to go to the mikveh. And there was a men's mikveh in Brownsville, as my brother spoke just before, so beautifully and eloquently about Brownsville. It was really an Erev Yisrael, a very special place. But I heard from Jews who remember the mikveh and remember my elder Zeta, my great-grandfather. And he said for 3 days they closed the mikveh down. They washed the ceilings, the walls, the floors, the mikveh. They cleaned it out perfectly and they made everything ready for the Lubavitch Erev is going to come to our mikveh. And finally, the moments came and the Lubavitch Erev came, and my great-grandfather prepared everything, laid it out. He actually was a businessman, and because the mikveh was closing down and no one wanted to take care of the mikveh, he sold his business. And he said he'll take over the mikveh to make the mikveh numbers on it. Because the community needs a men's mikveh as well. And he gave the Fried to get up his towels. And in the towels, the way my father told the story is that he put a $10 bill. Those days, a $10 bill, you were able to do something with a $10 bill. Be it as it may, after the Fried to finished the mikveh, he came to my grandfather, he said, I'd like to pay you for the mikveh. But after all, I came here to use the mikveh. So, my great-grandfather, Rebbe Hecht, said to him, Mir nehmen nicht kein Geld für Rebbes. Says, we do not take money from a Rebbe. We give money to a Rebbe, but we don't take money from the Rebbe. That's not, our job is to help a Rebbe, not that we should take money from the Rebbe. And again, here too, depending on who you'll ask in the family, the exact wording that was said, because I wasn't there. But the way I heard it, or the way I like to say it, the Fried Rebbe then said, Oy bazoi, if so, that you don't take, you are that type of Jew, that you don't take money from the Rebbe's, wel deine Eneklach sein von meine größten, that your grandchildren will be from my big followers. And those who know the history of the Hecht family, my father was blessed with 5 brothers, there were 6 brothers. All 6 brothers worked for the Rebbe at different times. Friedrich Rebbe, and also for our Rebbe, at different times, with different devotions, different involvements, etc., etc. Each one of them had their own stories, great stories to tell, but it was truly a bracha that was fulfilled, that his grandchildren, meaning the previous generation from us, were truly great followers. And if we go back to Ayoim Yoim, when it comes to Ruchnius, you should look for people higher than you. Sometimes when we, and again, I'm not trying to go for others, but when we judge ourselves and our accomplishments, we really don't have an excuse. We had fathers and uncles and grandparents that really demanded a tremendous amount. Those who know my father, sitting around my table, because I talk about the Hamala of the yeshiva. My father was not only an overachiever himself, but he also was, being an overachiever, demanded a tremendous amount from his workers, from his children, etc., and wanted us, pushed us to go beyond. So, we see people that accomplish more than us, we have to be envious and try to go beyond. That should inspire us to do more. So, actually started another story, which I got carried away with this story, but again, an interesting nakuda of the connection with the Hecht family, and the Rebbe, and especially our father, that they were people of action. When the Rebbe asked of things to be done, when the Rebbe either asked of them personally, by calling them into his office and asking them to do something, or simply just starting in various different campaigns. They became different campaigns of known as Mivtzoyim, but before that also there were various different campaigns. Even days of the feeding Rebbe, there was a campaign for Shabbos, there was a campaign for Al-Talu, Gula, Al-Talu, Yeshua, about spreading the concept of Mashiach, etc. And the Hechts, and many of the stories are told in the family of different campaigns and how they got involved and went from store to store. It was the Shabbos campaign, where they went from store to try to inspire, because as Rabbi Shalom Best said before, there were families that were somewhat Torah knowledgeable, yet even though they were Torah knowledgeable, and they basically felt, as a Jewish family, they felt they had to assimilate into the American culture, and something as important as Shabbos alone, they broke the Shabbos on different levels, or had their businesses open on Shabbos, thinking that, in America, this is the way you have to do business, but they're going to still be a Frum Yidden in all other aspects. So remember, even growing up in East Flatbush, of a storekeeper that my father would speak about, that he'd say, this is a storekeeper that, studied, went to some type of a yeshiva back in Europe, and had an incentive, and said, besides for the fact that he was not a Shomer Shabbos, everything else, in his life, he was somewhat of a Shomer Torah mitzvahs. He watched and fulfilled all the other parts, all the mitzvahs, the kosher home, etc. And Shabbos, he just couldn't hold himself back from keeping the store open, thinking that he's not going to have parnasa if he doesn't have Shabbos. People won't buy by him at all because his store was closed on Shabbos. But a generation before that, talking about the 20s and the 30s, surely there were many, many people like that were Torah knowledgeable, Torah observant, but yet still did not keep the Shabbos. And in the 1940s, there was a store campaign. My father would speak about that. He says, the Hecht boys, we were before we were married, and we went from store to store, with a tremendous amount of energy and fight to go. And there's different stories of different things where they, how they intimidated different storekeepers until they got them to close the stores on Shabbos. So the point I want to bring out is simply that Rabbi Yakov Yehuda Hecht, or known commonly as Rabbi JJ, was a man of action. The svaris and the philosophy and the theories were all very, very nice. He said, we have time for that. But the main thing is the action. And I think very much to the Rebbe's point of view also, that the first thing you have to do is start is with action. Jew has to be, mitzvahs niceness. You have to do the mitzvah. Go out and get another Jew to do a mitzvah. He believes more in God, a little bit less in God. Put on tefillin, give a little tzedakah, do the mitzvahim, do the different mitzvahs that we campaign, and in that way, hopefully, or as in the book Rebbe, the writer Plushkin, again, it's his perspective, but he says how the Rebbe's plan was to make Bali Tshuva one mitzvah at a time. He wanted to change the world one mitzvah at a time. And we see in so many different people where they simply, change their entire life, just one mitzvah, and starting to do one mitzvah, and that's a lesson for all of us. If we all take on one more mitzvah, or one more hidur in the mitzvah that you may be doing the mitzvah, to do the mitzvah now a little bit nicer, with a little bit more devotion, a little bit more love, a little bit more concentration, a little more inspiration, a little bit more with a fever of love and devotion, will really change ourselves to become a complete Baal Tshuva, a complete change, and become a person that is really call ourselves Chassid, etc. Ashreinu, oh Ashreinu, Acher Chelkeinu, Manoim, 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 Goraleinu, oh Ashreinu, Acher Chelkeinu, Manoim, Manoim, oh my Yakov, oh my Yakov, oh my Yakov, your latest say, oh my Yakov.
You're going home and
the concept of Atzlacha Bisman, which means that we are all allotted a certain amount of time to live and accomplish. And then there are many of us who utilize the time. There are those of us who not only do utilize the time, but we utilize the time to its utmost. There was once a time that the Friedrich Rebbe had to travel somewhere. He had to make a train. If he was on Leningrad, then he had to go someplace. And generally, for the Friedrich Rebbe to travel wasn't simple because he was followed, and every time he went out of his house to go someplace was a sakhan. The Friedrich Rebbe was sitting calmly doing whatever it was, and the Rebbe was amazed how, like, you couldn't even tell that, when we go out on a trip, you have to make a plane, already 3 hours before, we're worried, we pack our suitcases, and you can't concentrate because I have to make sure I make the plane. The Friedrich Rebbe was calm as if nothing happened. And it came 7:30, whatever, he picked himself up, put on his coat, and he went. So the Rebbe asked him, how was this that we were able to sit so calmly? Not even, that when you leave the house, you had to make a train, and going to the train, and making the train, etc. And then the Friedrich Rebbe explained that such a thing which means Atzlacha B'Zman, that when you do something, you're totally engrossed in what you're doing, and nothing else exists. When we live our life in such a style, the time, you could say, is twice as productive. I want to share with you a letter that my father wrote to the Rebbe on his 64th birthday. I didn't understand the letter. I saw the letter previously. I never understood the answer, but now I understood it. Today it hit me. My father wrote to the Rebbe, I'm not going to go through the whole, today my birthday, I'm becoming 64 years old, and then he wrote, the Yard in Leifen. The years are running. He's trying to say, because my father's relation with the Rebbe goes back when he was a young teenager, and now we knew the Rebbe close to 50 years already. He said, we're like, time is gone, the Yard in Leifen. That Baba Yom, by Abraham, it says Baba Yom. What does it mean? Baba Yom by Abraham means that every single day was a day of accomplishment. So he said, God and life you guys are running, very good, beautiful. But you have to make sure that every single day is Baba Yom. Every single day is the day of accomplishment. And he said, of course, Lamal Yusuf. That means there are many people, the young life, you go in the street, the people who are getting 80, 90, 60, what do they have to show for themselves? What they accomplish? By you, the young life, the Rebbe tells them, it's a good thing. Your years are running, but you're doing, every day is full of accomplishment. But Omnam, and this is what I never understood, but now I understood today, Omnam, Efshe Berisa. It's possible that you could do that by running. That means, by Abraham even said, Baba Yom, every day was a day of accomplishment. So he lived his life to average, but there's a person who can, every single day, could run. What does that mean if you run? That day has 24 hours only. But if you're running, that means you accomplish twice as much. That's what he told him. The young life is true. But, and he meant to say, because he knew my father didn't walk slowly. My father ran. So he told him, it can be running. It can be running. How do you do it running? By when you accomplish twice as much in your day, then it's running. So Rabbi Hecht wasn't only Baba Yomim, but he was Benitza, he was in running. Because he was blessed to have Atzlacha B'Zman. He was blessed as a chassid, he had great success in his time. He was accomplished. I don't want to get into now a lengthy explanation where this week's parasha talks about Chayesara, that every single day of a life was full of mitzvah. The commentaries asked the question, how is it possible? Avraham Avinu didn't know until he was 3, until he was 40, until 48. And the commentaries explain because Sarah, she may have started to become observant later on in her life. But when she lived 24 hours a day, she was doing it. So if she, for argument's sake, she was only serving God for 60 years, but she did it 25 hours a day without stop. So the 60 years made up for the first 60 years. So even if someone missed, you could always make up because a certain part of our day is dedicated to sleeping. If you don't sleep those hours, so that means that you lived a double day today. Right? Next, this Saturday night, we're going to turn back the clock. So we all have the choice. We could all sleep an extra hour Sunday morning, or we cannot change the clock. Don't change the clock Saturday night, not the Shabbat before you go to sleep. Sunday morning you wake up at the regular time, 7:30, 8 o'clock Chassidus. And really on the clock it's only 7 o'clock. So you just gained an hour. So your Sunday day you're going to have an extra hour. Or we can sleep it up. The choice is yours. Bottom line is, we're here in the yeshiva, which is named after the Rebbe gave, after the Rebbe's suggestion was given the name of yeshiva is called Yakov Yehuda. But therefore we have to look a little bit to the life of Yakov Yehuda. We have to see what type of life he lived. And we, who are little students in his school, have to take inspiration from his name. And one of the great things about him was, everyone knew that when he spoke very quickly. Why did he speak very quickly? Because he was on the radio. On the radio, he only had 15 minutes. But he wanted to be able to tell his speech, or whatever, it took 20 minutes, or 25 minutes. So how do you fit in 15 minutes what you want to say in 25 minutes? You speak quickly. So every time a person heard him, people who heard him on the radio knew they were Hecht very, very quickly. There were other people who spoke on the radio. Before and after, they spoke slow. And he spoke quickly. Why? Because he had to get into the 15 minutes. More than 15 minutes. This is exactly what I'm talking about. There was B'diritza by him. It was Bo Bayomim. It was a Slach of his mind. So we in this yeshiva have to know that when you're here, you all have the potential to have not only a Slach in your learning, but you have the potential to have a Slach of his mind. That your mind, your time that you spend learning, you should be twice as successful as anybody else studying that time. So L'chaim Hashem bless us that we should take the inspiration of today's day. We should take the koiches that Azal Rebbe of today's day, and that everyone here in the yeshiva should have a tzlacha in their learning, should have a tzlacha bisman, that we should accomplish twice as much as we have to accomplish. And we should be zeicher that the Erev should have a tzlacha in bisman. So if God thought about sending Mashiach, whenever he thought about it, if God does it, he could also do it running. So you can do it twice as quickly. So whatever it is, we just now shorten the time of Mashiach. We brought it half the time for speed and closer. So this time we're on this threshold, as the Rebbe said many times. We should very be zeicher, Kitzu Radam, Shech Yafer. We should be back together with us, standing at the side of the Rebbe, translating the Rebbe's words to us. And we should be zeicher to see it happen. Kari mamish mamish.
Fine. Ay, ay, I sent you an email, you got it? Not personally, but. I just updated the time and set the link was changed now. I was watching it and I wasn't gonna come. I went to home and I said, you know, let me come for a few minutes. Is it over now? It's never over. Came all the way at the end. Now I have to go home. Snooze, you lose.